Hello and welcome to Rage Gaming and a little talk about one of the best games that I've ever played, Baldurs Gate 3. And sadly, in regards to major patches at least, BG3 has now ended. Even stated by Hysterian himself in the final patch animated short that they released on the same day patch 8 went out. In fact, it's been about 1 full month since then, so you'd certainly think that would suggest the game's popularity has finally reached its end. Well, no. The truth is that roughly 100 to 150,000 players are playing concurrently at once on just Steam even now. And since the patch launched about a month ago, the player base has boomed back into life and has stayed that way week after week. But why? Well, it's just the nature of patch 8. But also the fact that it's the last one. Clearly, a lot of people haven't played the game in quite some time and have missed maybe multiple major patches, the big one being 7 and the launch of modding and the modding toolkit as well. Modders and map creators have been working hard to produce incredible new content to play around with that should be there forever. That combined with 12 new subclasses in patch 8 encourages a lot of fresh playthroughs. So right now it's clear that amount of content and interest has survived that full month. It's pretty cool. So if you somehow didn't know or have been waiting for the right time to jump back in, now I think is definitely a good time when the popularity is high. In this case, active modding will be up and there's more to engage with and talk about, especially when you consider the sad fact that again, it is indeed the last major patch. There'll be no new Larian fresh content or overhauls, no new systems or whatever else of that nature. They've essentially completed what they set out to do and actually more than that. So if you're waiting until that was the case, it's now. As a relatively quick roundup then, here's what you might have missed in patch 8 and, other main details. First up, the insane pile of new subclasses that are in the game now. There's 12 total, so there's 1 for each main class. The monk has the drunken master. If you want to slap your foes and in doing so, make them drunk. That drunk state gives them disadvantage on dexterity and charisma checks, but you can build AC and increased attack rolls against those drunk targets, which is pretty silly. The fighter has the arcane archer subclass, fire off different kinds of magical arrows, kind of like, your battle tactic stuff, but for archery. These special arrow options provide a lot of utility and a few different types of damage, so you can consider that as a high utility option. For rogue, we have the awesome swashbuckler, basically the pirate. The hilarious fancy footwork benefit means you can melee a target and then they can't make opportunity attacks against you for the duration of your turn, so you go in and out. And that is even more so with the fact that they give you the ability to sneak attack enemies even if you don't have advantage. That, between the fun dirty tricks of disarms, blinds and vicious mockery, it makes for a proper rascal class. There's the ranger that has swarmkeeper. Here we choose between 3 different kinds of spirit swarms, which can be swapped between even when you level up again. So on your attacks based on the swarm, you can choose to do different things. You could be shocking a target, pushing them around, helping yourself teleport, blinding foes and more, all depending on the type of swarm. But when you hit a level 11 with the subclass, you get the mighty swarm, which enhances all of these options greatly. So if you like the idea of controlling a swarm, that could be for you, I guess. Next, we have the College of Glamour for Bard. As a pure support idea, you can do things like buff allies with temporary health and charm enemies that attack said allies. This makes them then vulnerable to special follow-ups like a potent command that you can force a target to flee, move closer, freeze, drop to the ground, drop the weapon, that kind of stuff. Very strong control for likely the biggest threat against the party in each fight. Pretty cool. Cleric, on the other hand, has the Death Domain subclass. Cleric finally gets a necromancy option, but it's also one that's all about dealing damage. Thanks to the Reaper passive, meaning your cantrips that normally target one creature get to target 1 extra creature, doubling the potential. And your special of Channel Divinity, that gives you the ability to deal extra necrotic damage on your melee attacks, of which you're going to be dealing a lot of necrotic damage with the options of the subclass. And at one point, you get to fully ignore necrotic resistance, which is pretty incredible as a DPS option. Moving to Barbarian, we have the awesome Path of the Giants. If you're not big enough normally, perfect, this is the subclass for you. When you rage, you increase your size instantly, basically like using the enlarged effect with the same benefits for bonus damage. Physical in nature, you can start kicking enemies around, you benefit on your thrown attacks in particular, and it's encouraging that playstyle. You get to get extra element damage bonuses on your weapon, but also it provides that whole return feature for the weapon when you throw it, so the throw playstyle, which has always been strong and fun, is very much encouraged with this subclass. Next, we have the Bladesginging Wizard, a battle mage basically. Grabbing a proper melee weapon, you can get into the thick of the melee as a wizard. The class Action Bladesong has all these stacked bonuses like granting increased AC to keep you alive, movement speed, advantage in acrobatics, as well as a bonus to constitution saving throws. So, despite the up-close nature, you have pretty decent protection to help you maintain your concentration, which is important on a wizard. Through various actions, you'll build up a resource called Bladesong Charges, which you spend on Bladesong climaxes, dealing force damage and healing your allies at the same time by slamming down. So it's a very unique playstyle for your usual spellcasting wizard. For the Paladin, we have the Oath of the Crown, a beast of a tank that protects their allies really well. Healing allies with the power of your voice, forcing foes to focus their attention on you, and you can even spend reactions to heal your ally for twice your current Paladin level in exchange for the damage taken on yourself. So a very good subclass to build super tanky and importantly very healthy and force a lot of the damage into yourself rather than your party. When it comes to the Sorcerer, we're now able to access Shadow Magic. This grants you the ability to see in all darkness, even if magical, which means you can heavily invest into that really strong concept of cloud-based control and darkness and all of that. It's just not going to affect you. You can also summon shadow dogs that apply omens to targets, which helps you generate sorcery points, which is cool, or control targets with Entangle, but incredibly, it can split itself into multiple shadow dogs, scaling your threat as the fight continues, which is super unique. For Druid, we have the Circle of Stars. Instead of Wild Shape, then you take on the Starry Form, which has 3 options. The Archer, which has you casting luminous arrows for a ranged radiant playstyle. There's Chalice for healing yourself or nearby allies. And then there's Dragon, which lets you breathe out radiant damage from your maw. Also incredible for maintaining concentration with some protection for that. So super cool. But lastly, for the new subclasses, we reach the Warlock with the iconic hexblade in a very strong version of it. You get this kind of built-in Pact to the Blade option, magical damage on your weapon, charisma scaling your main melee attack modifier rather than something like strength or dex. But then it's all about the Hexblade Curse, which you can trigger on a target by, say, attacking them with your weapon. This provides you with extra damage against said cursed target, increasing your chance to crit, and if it dies, you even regain some life. But for those dead cursed targets, you can then raise them as an ally with different forms based on the size of the target. There's other perks and even more spell access options that become available for this very much awesome version of this subclass. But that's the subclasses. Definitely a major point of the update and a point of interest not just for patch 8 but long-time replayability in general. Other relevant big features for patch 8 though are of course the long-awaited crossplay, so now you can play with your friends outside of your own platform. There's the very silly and fun photo mode to take some screenshots or cinematic moments. It's amazingly even usable during cutscenes and conversations, and there's a ton of options and ways to use the tool to get familiar with. The patch, as usual though, also addressed a ton of issues and bugs, but those were the main features really. So patch 8 in itself is a really good reason to get back into the game, but don't forget the fact that modding came in the previous main patch, and that also works on console now too. So with the time between that launch and now, there's even more options to consider, fresh stuff to try. And with the toolkit available, players have been making their own levels and content that could add something fresh and fun to the game, like I said, for the rest of its life. But right now, when most people are going to be playing, probably for the foreseeable future, there's more going on than ever. So with all of that said, all of that to consider, it really is the end of official Baldurs Gate 3, which is, no matter what, pretty bittersweet to say. Honestly, it lasted way longer than I could have ever expected. And while it's true that small patches and updates are still going to come to address bugs and other smaller details, again, they've made it really clear that that was the last major patch. In many ways, the various big patches felt like they were filling in the gaps of the original release. From adding, say, the whole epilogue thing for your more happy endings, to the evil ending playthroughs, and greater depth to the Dark Urge options, being able to change your appearance with the magic mirror when that came in, or when they added honor mode and the legendary actions as a whole concept, more comparable to D&D, making it possible to actually work in Minthara in a good playthrough. The major moments like, the release of in-game mod support, I think this has been an incredible management of a post-release game. And while you definitely could argue that the game could have launched with some of these features, I do think that's a sour way to view it. It felt more like, to me, gift after gift, because they could have released this game with its insane success and then just wrapped it up pretty quick. They could have charged us for all kinds of future features, like many other games kind of do now. Larian has really stood apart from that sad side of the gaming industry, and I feel it's inspired others to do similar. I look at the recent Claire Obscure when I say that. So while I do think it's true that, say, Act 3, yes, could have been a lot bigger, and a lot of people wanted more than just a lower city, after all these patches and updates, I think the game is very fleshed out and well beyond what they would have even set out to do in the first place. So if they're happy with that, that is fair enough. Obviously, it's time for Larian to move on and focus on the next project, or maybe even multiple projects. Because if you aren't aware, there's potential that Larian's working on not one, but 2 projects. And as well, they made it very clear that they don't want the next release to take another 6 years. Obviously, it's sad they're not working on something like a big DLC for the game, or say the next Baldurs Gate game in general. But I'd say they've earned our interest in future projects, even if it's a completely different IP than anything they've done before. Back in 2024, Larian opened a new studio with the purpose of assisting 2 new RPGs in that development. But again, that doesn't mean we should expect 2 releases or at the same time, or maybe even ever. More like they were looking at 2 projects and putting in effort to see that through. We'll see whether that happens or not, but at very least we know we've got one thing coming from them. And they're very much fully focused on it now. It was at one of the Game Awards that Sven Vink, the CEO, basically said the studio is planning to release its next game sometime 2028 or 2029. Though he did make it very clear that that timeline is a general idea and certainly not set in stone. And they haven't said whether that means early access like we saw with Baldurs Gate and other stuff, but their clear goal is less than 6 years. But you know, 2028 or 2029, still a good 3 or 4 years away from now. Hopefully we'll get some information in, say, 2026 if we're lucky. But for the moment, they've also made it clear they're going into a media blackout state for the foreseeable future. So we can expect absolutely nothing for some time now. But yeah, that's going to be it for now. I hope this encouraged you to jump back into Baldurs Gate 3 while it's certainly alive and hype again. Try something new, a new subclass, some interesting mods, maybe a different approach. Now, I think, will be the best time to do so, maybe for the rest of the game's history. Because unless something happens that's crazy with a big mod project, I can't imagine something breathing the same kind of life that Patch 8 has done. For Larian, I'm not sure if they're going to create something new with a new IP, or like many think, go back to the whole Divinity series. But I would say whatever they do next is probably likely to be a turn-based RPG, since they really know what they're doing. But what do you guys think? For now then, I've been Hollow, you've been you, and thanks for watching.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.